Hello everyone, welcome back to the Amber Serpent. My name is Gulveg for this Rune Reading Wednesday. So today is September 8th. How is that new moon in Virgo treating you all, folks? It's a doozy, it seems like, for a lot of people. It's a lot of structuring, restructuring, reanalyzing, assimilating all of the changes and even some of the chaos that's ensuing in a lot of people's lives. So if any of your folks are looking to see what kind of guidance came up around that new moon, take a look at the video of the new moon in Virgo tarot reading that we did this week. So, as is the usual, we will be pulling some runes to see what kind of guidance we have for the next week. All right, so no matter if you're watching live or if you're watching the recording, join me in creating the intention of what is it that we need to know most at this time for the next week. What do we need to know most? It seems good. All right. All right, rune pull number 1. I have 4 of them that came up in one time. And we have Tears rune, Tiwaz, Lagus, and we have Nauthies. It's been coming up a lot for folks lately. And Anzus, communication. All right, I'm going to pull 2 more times. Interesting. When I had my hand in the rune bag, this is the rune that I saw in my mind. Yera, harvest, karma, you reap what you sow. And Kanos, desire. One more time, folks. Let's see what comes out. Okay, rune pull number 3. Horse and the Rider. Relationships. And Ingwaz, the sacred masculine rune. So let's just take a look. Give me a moment, and we're going to just see how all of these are relating to one another. So right off the bat, what I'm seeing as a relationship between Nauthies and actually between Nauthies and Tiwaz, which one of its associations is being associated with the North Pole. So direction, setting your compass, setting your sights. And then we have Lagus, one of its associations is the hero's journey. So like when the warrior would go into the wilderness to, essentially face death, face his fears, face their own mortality. And then if they survive, they come out of the wilderness and they're pronounced the warrior. And we have that with karma, patterns, desire, and the thing that's coming around Anzus, it's known as being the communication rune, but it's also associated with Mercury, and it's associated with thought. So the planet Mercury is associated with both communication and thought, and Anzus has those same traits as well. And then in addition to that, we also have relationship, which it doesn't just necessarily mean our relationship with another individual, although it can be that. It can also be a relationship with ourself, our spirit, our soul, our guides. And then we have the seed of potential. So all of that being said, the very first and foremost thing that's coming to my mind is that a lot of us who may be watching this are in a place where we might have to make some decisions. might have to make some decisions, and sometimes decisions are kind of like between a rock and a hard space, where we may be in a place where we know we have to make some decisions, but there's such a lack of clarity as to what the right decision is, and or it may even be one of those kind of decisions where it just kind of seems like no matter what you decide, it kind of sucks. So that's the rub. The thing about Nauthiz, though, is that it doesn't all suck. And the reason why is because us individuals as human beings, we have this weird, quirky thing about us, is that we don't tend to be our best versions of ourselves, to grow, to evolve, unless there's a little bit of pressure applied. We don't become our best versions of ourselves sitting on the couch. We become the best versions of ourselves when we go into that hero's journey and face our fears, face our shadows, heal, do kind of the hard stuff. And so that is the self-sacrifice for the greater good, and that's another part of Tiwaz. So something to know about Tiwaz, Tyr's rune, is the myth that's associated with that rune is associated with Tyr losing his hand in order to essentially save the world from Fenrir, which was this chaotic force, this giant wolf that was wreaking havoc on both the world of man as well as the world of the gods. And the thing to know about this is that not only did he lose his hand, but Tyr had a very personal relationship with the wolf. He cared about the wolf. So this was an act of betrayal for the greater good. So there was a lot more sacrificed than just his hand. There was a lot of internal sacrifice as well. And so there might be some sacrifices for the greater good that we may have to make. And that is the friction between the two sticks that creates the bonfire. Now, the thing, though, about this is, how do we know when it's worth it? How do we know when that sacrifice for the greater good is good enough to make the bitter worth the potential sweetness at the end? So in Tyr's case, one could debate very much that, yeah, it probably was worth it because he saved the world. But in our cases, sometimes the decision is not quite so evident as to if it's worth it. And that comes with desire, folks. Desire is one of those themes that gets a little bit of a bad rep because desire, it's like it's associated with the ego, and the ego's gotten a little bit of a bad rep too, because even though, yeah, there's a lot of downfalls with having the separation consciousness of ego, we wouldn't be able to do our job as co-creators of the universe and have this very unique experience as a human being without the ego. So just like the ego, desire gets a little bit of a bad rep because it can run amok. And if we allow desire to be behind the wheel versus us having like a yoke on it and being able to manage that desire, then it can be like the fire that gets out of control and burns down the house. But just like fire can burn down our house, it can also cook a nutritious meal. It can purify water. Fire is very much a helpful element when it's put in its rightful place, and same thing with desire. So what's very interesting here is what I'm seeing as a connection between Tyr's rune, Tiwaz, and Kanaz, is that this is a calling to lean into your desire. This is not one of those cases in which we're being invited to take that stoic discipline of the monk who completely negates all of their earthly desires for, spiritual enlightenment. This is one of those cases where we're being asked to sink into our heart and ask ourselves, what do you really want? What is it that really will give you fulfillment? The thing too is that over the last year or so, many of us have changed a lot. It probably is fair to say that most of you watching this are not the same person that you were 12, 18, 24 months ago. And so sometimes I think what happens is we might prescribe to a particular story or a particular set of desires of what it is that we think we want. And then as we grow and evolve and change, sometimes we don't take the time to take a look and see if whether or not that story and what it is that we want or what we think we want still applies to this new version of ourselves. And that comes in with relationships. So this whole reanalyzing, which is this is a great time to do it too with this new moon in Virgo. When we reanalyze who we are, we take a look back and just not analyze from judging or shoulding, but coming from a place of just witnessing, how have I grown? How have I changed in the last 12, 24 months? And is what I think I want still apply? Or is it time to set a new pattern, to set a new course, a new direction? Has my vision for what truly fulfills me, has that changed? Do I need to plant different seeds of potential to grow something that perhaps maybe I've never grown before? And when we change and we make those changes in our lives, right off the bat, something will have to be sacrificed. So like when we create something, there's always a sacrifice because we're creating something to the exclusion of something else, because creation is a pretty concentrated process. So if I decide to paint a picture of a flower, I'm painting a picture of a flower to the exclusion of painting a picture of a mountain, for example. So making these choices always is, the creative process is always a process of cutting away and concentrating our efforts. So if you've been feeling really scattered, if you've been feeling like you're being pulled in 50 different directions and your energy isn't really going anywhere, it really is even more of a helpful process to take a look at where it is that you want to concentrate your efforts, what it is that truly fulfills you, and let go of the stuff that isn't in alignment with that anymore. Setting a new course. And that process is part of the hero's journey. And the other thing about Lagoose is that it's also associated with the leek, which was one of the rewards that the boy warrior would come out of the wilderness and he would be given a leek as a sign of fulfilling manhood. It was a phallic symbol. And so when we go into the wilderness, which is to go and take a look and see who are we now? What kind of shadows have we already perhaps maybe mastered, or that maybe we're still working with? And we take a look at ourselves and really examine ourselves from a witness perspective without judgment and with compassion. And I would also recommend journaling this as we do this, because it's going to be probably a complex kind of thing. There's lots of layers in there. And we come out with a different perspective of, this job doesn't work out for me anymore. This relationship, it needs to change. Perhaps I need to communicate this truth to someone, or perhaps there is something that my heart is being called to express, either publicly or privately. All of those things, one, is a sacrifice, is an egoic sacrifice. Because there's going to be, if these were things that were comfortable, probably we've already have done them. But it's all good, because at the end of the day, it is worth it, because it means that we will bring ourselves on course to align ourselves with our heart's truest desires, to create more fulfilling patterns that will align us more closely with a true, authentic relationship with ourselves, which then will automatically mean that our relationships outside of ourselves with others will be more authentic and fulfilling. And we will do all of this, which will create more clarity as a detoxifying effect of the process itself. More clarity, more clear communication, because we will be essentially weeding out that which doesn't work anymore. So the process, it may not initially seem like it's fun. However, I would invite you to approach it with a attitude of exploration and curiosity. Instead of like, oh gosh, what am I going to have to give up now? How about, what kind of space do I need to make in order to invite new growth, new possibilities, and new opportunities? It'll get those two perspectives, they'll probably get us ultimately to the same place, but one is a journey of that's kind of like wah wah wah. Nobody likes the idea of having to give up things or sacrifice. The process will be somewhat similar, but it'll be with a attitude of expansion, more freedom. So instead of like looking at it from a place of sacrifice, perhaps these are things that are just weighing us down anyway. Perhaps all we're doing is just pulling up the anchor so that we can set sail. So I welcome you all to set your sails high, set your compass straight, and focus on what it is that is your heart's truest calling. Listening very intently to those subtle whispers that are right underneath the shouts of the egoic mind. Whew. Well, if that isn't some work for the next week, I don't know what is. It's going to be a really interesting week, folks. This is a really powerful week astrologically, and I hope that those of you who are watching this lean into it and get the most out of it, because we're all in this together. I look forward to seeing you next week here at the Amber Serpent. Thanks. Bye-bye.